Welcome to a workshop about Agile and Scrum methodologies by IEEE. My name is Roberto Hernandez.
My name is Marcelino Gonzalez.
So to begin, when you look at most job descriptions on LinkedIn or any other job recruitment service, sometimes for the high-level softwares, and it's not mostly, and sometimes it's not always electrical computer, sometimes mechanical has some of those processes as well. You may see a qualification at the bottom under the preferred qualification subsection that says knowledge in Agile and Scrum methodologies, or it can be another type of project development process. That is exactly what Agile is. It's a software development process. And Agile implements many different types of methodologies that are based around the idea of what it's like to have a simplified development in your current task. Of course, that development obviously comes with requirements. And the solutions that evolve through the software development process in Agile, it comes through a collaboration between different teams, but not just teams, cross-functional teams, teams that are willing to work with other teams and with one another. The most utmost value in Agile, of course, is that you want obviously a great predictability.
Apologize.
What's up, Alec?
Hi.
A very important thing about Agile, one of the most important concepts is you want a really great predictability in your project, of course. You want not just present results, but you want to also predict results heading into the future. And of course, the Agile software development process implements and advertises to work for greater quality in your project. It can't just be projects sometimes, it can also be tasks, etc. And another very important thing that Agile is a very simple idea straight to the point about what's it like to achieve greater quality in your projects. And a very great variable you have to consider is you want to always see your task in Agile to always be receptive, never receptive to change, and always would accept change in a project. Now, Agile is, let's divide it into 4 different things, right? You have your individuals and interactions. You have your functional deliverables, your customer collaboration, and you want your current task or project to respond to change, right? In your individuals and interactions, you want to follow different processes and tools, starting from the origin of that specific task. Excuse me about that. In your functional deliverables, you want to have a very great documentation and setup, right, and process that's very organized when beginning your project or task. And of course, customer collaboration can be that work you do between what I mentioned in the cross-functional teams or contract negotiations in your projects. And of course, responding to change, always following a plan and always being organized. Agile sets the roots for what it's like to have an iterative software development. Understanding the ideology of Agile. So of course, as previously discussed, it promotes a very disciplined project management process that it always has a mentality in the process that you have to keep analyzing your different constraints and restrictions that you're a part of, and not just realize those constraints, but also be able to adapt to it. Always want to adapt and make changes. Agile, let's consider as a way that it's a leadership philosophy and what it's like to develop very organized software, right? It encourages things like teamwork, self-organization, and having accountable, knowing when something is going wrong and whether you're responsible for it or not. Agile is the set of engineering practices that it intends to allow for very rapid delivery software with obviously great quality and great predictability, not just in the current but in the future stages as well. It's pretty much a business approach that it places a development with the customer needs and overall the same goals on the same mindset. So it places not just what the customer would like, but the company's goals on the same path. So everyone knows exactly what they would need without any disagreements, of course. Now, what is done in Agile? Or what are some of the principles we can consider? Agile focuses on the individuals and the interactions previously discussed, rather than the processes and tools. It wants to see what others feel when working a specific task. It focuses mostly, let's consider it, a part of Agile focuses on the mood of the teams or the individuals that are working on it. It creates software that's much more important than your traditional comprehensive like documents working on something. Most importantly, Agile, a very great useful product of Agile, portion of Agile, pardon me, is that it collaborates with customers. And it's much more important than just negotiating one-on-one. It wants to adapt mostly to what the customer needs. And of course, it follows a change instead of a plan. It's never receptive to change. It always wants change. Now, let's talk about different benefits of Agile, of course. Customer, development teams, Scrum Master, your vendor in an Agile process, your product owner, your PMOs, and C-level executives, correct? So your customer in Agile is always going to be more responsive to requests, of course. And like I previously discussed in Agile, you always want to adapt to that customer's needs. Your development teams in Agile, you always want to work never by yourself, but with development work and work closely and coherently with your cross-functional teams. Your Scrum Master in your Agile software development process, it's great. It's very important in helping and tracking daily meetings, always being on track and always contributing every day. Never in a different time ranges, in time differences, my bad. Your vendor in Agile, it's always going to want to focus on your high development features, and it always wants to increase your efficiency, right? And reduce wastage or reduce wasted time on a task. Your product owner in Agile, it always going to align with your customer's needs, not just your customer needs, but your company needs as well. In an Agile software development process, like I recently mentioned, it places the customer needs and the company's needs on the same exact track. And it always expects a maximum delivery of value. But what is the highest peak that you can deliver that software or that task at? And always PMOst and C-level executives in Agile. It's a coherent form of daily project development. And it always wants you to plan your specific task or processes with less speculation, or pretty much less headaches. It wants you to focus on a project in a very relaxing and a less headache type environment. Now, can Agile help you grow and can it save green? So let's say you don't develop an Agile software development process. If a company doesn't develop it or you do not develop it, we're working on a specific project. Well, these are pretty much the differences that you will see. Agile, you see that when 42% of people or companies use it, there's a 42% success ratio to a 9. It's a big difference there. And when companies don't develop an Agile software development process, you see that there's a greater chance that you fail than succeed. On the bottom, between those both charts, I found a fact that says 82% of failed projects, they cited a type of software development practice called waterfall as a primary cause of failure. Now let's talk about a little bit what waterfall development is. In a waterfall software development type process, right? A project phase, it's only going to start when the previous phase is complete. Now that is a bit different than Agile, of course. Agile, it looks best when there's a higher chance of like frequent requirement changes, correct? It doesn't have to wait for a previous phase to be done or not. And of course, Agile is a lot more flexible and allows us to make changes in any phase whatsoever. And previous discussed in the slide, Agile brings great predictability to your software processes and projects. The projects that are used within Agile development contain about 93% fewer defects than any other development process. And of course, 44% of people who use an Agile development process cited that it's a lot more money efficient. It saves the company a lot of money. And also, 70% of people say that when they use an Agile development process, they notice that it takes a lot less time to complete. So it's very efficient on time as well. Are there any questions so far?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. So what are some Agile metrics I could use for reporting a project, working on a project? Well, you can consider metrics here as a synonym for a variable, correct? When you work in Agile, some of the different industry questions you're going to see are, will this measurement that I'm working on will accelerate the delivery of the value? And also, will this measurement enhance trust? Do I have trust in this product or in this task that I'm working on? Another thing is very important about Agile. It's always going to focus on the outcome. It overstresses the outcome. It's never going to, which is another synonym for value delivery, not the overall output. It wants you to always place the best result on the table at the moment, whether it's good or bad. Different variables that you see that are followed by an Agile process are characterized by lead time, cycle time, burn down charts, a throughput, a customer satisfaction, or a quote unquote NPS. Now, lead time is pretty much, it's the amount of time it takes for a unit of work to go from an in-queue state to a completed state. So from an intermediate process to a final result. Cycle time in an agile software development process is a measure of, let's say, the elapsed time when work starts on an item until it's ready for delivery. On burn down chart, in an agile development process, it shows the amount of work completed and the amount of total work remaining. Compares the two and displays the two. And throughput in an agile development process is it's a count of the number of work items that are completed in a given time period, such as a week or a month. It's pretty much another variable that measures output in an agile software development process. And NPS, it's pretty much, let's consider it as a loyalty variable or quote unquote metric. And what NPS does is that it quantifies, right, how often or how fast how customer would like to see its different, how fast or how qualified a customer would like to see its product or how fast it would like to see it delivered. It's pretty much the variable that distinguishes how the customer will feel when the final project or the final product or project is delivered to him. Now, this pretty much chart here describes a little bit more about the agile development process in order. Right. So in the first step, you would see that the agile starts with an idea of the evaluation of different processes and the current structure of a company, right? And what step one does, it starts the process by determining what is the origin and the current position that we are currently at in this project. And let's say the second step of Agile, that's considered as a restraint that says suggestions for improvement and process optimization. What it wants the user to do, or the company to do, is it wants to optimize a process with the right combination of not just technologies, but idea to work on that current project. The third step, let's consider it as the application design together with the client. It wants to be able to choose the correct technologies and review the different options of the client. Like I said previously before, it does not want to put just the company on the right line. It wants to put the company and the customer on the same line. The client is also part of the project, and the client's feedback is always going to be very important for the continued project success or the continued project development process. And the fourth step, let's talk about it as the application, construction, and implementation of the project. It wants to talk about, it wants to analyze how the weekly delivery of your developments for the end user to operate and request for changes. What pretty much it says is that it wants the end user to be part of the process of development and testing. So it wants the customer, not just to give feedback on the initial and final product, but it wants the customer to understand how that product is made and delivered to them from start to finish, not just from start and end. The fifth step, let's consider as the evaluation and monitoring as a project. What this determines is that it wants that the process is working as agreed. What pretty much this says is that it wants to make sure and to confirm that throughout this whole duration of project or task, that the customer and the company were on the same page. Now, this is a, Marcelino, you want to take over from here?
So this is an example of what a daily stand-up meeting is like in Agile and Scrum. But in this video in particular, is mostly focused in Agile. As you will see in the video, everyone is working in the same office. And when you're in Scrum, is not particularly the case, but in Agile is definitely is. So go ahead, play it.
Thank you.
The sound doesn't appear.
It is not.
No.
Let me make some quick changes about that. One sec. Perfect. Does it do so now? Is it good
Yes.
here? Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
It's stand-up time. Everybody good to go?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Ryoko. We're just getting started. I have you on speakerphone.
Oh, hello everybody.
Hey, Ryoko.
Hi, Ryoko.
Hi, Ryoko.
Okay. Who wants to start?
I don't like talking in public or at all, really.
Harold, please, the floor is yours.
Yesterday, I finished the source code for the recipe request voice interface, and I ran the unit test, so that's done. But these stand-ups are okay. You only have to answer 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what is your main impediment? Today, I am working on passing the request parameters to the recipe search code. It's structured. It's fast. It's painless. My main impediment is still my lack of knowledge of the speech recognition engine. Ryoko is our expert, and she's been a wonderful help, but with the time difference, it's just challenging.
Okay, that's very good, Harold. But we need to resolve that. Ryoko,
Hi.
can you send me your schedule? I will look into getting travel approval.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks, Ryoko. Why don't you go next?
Okay, sure. Today I reviewed...
The daily stand-up is one of the team's most important rituals. In just 15 minutes, we see what everyone is up to. We update the iteration wall and see opportunities to help others remove blockers.
I said, Bill in infrastructure. I said, Bill, it's not 1985 anymore. We don't do things like that now. We're already having issues with
Larry.
latency, and it's never going to stop.
Larry, the key is to be diligent about staying on track and to park any longer conversations until after the meeting. Larry, this sounds like an important issue and I need to understand it better. Let's put it in the parking lot and drill down a little deeper right after the stand-up.
Good idea. That's it for me then.
All right, Ciara, you are at bat.
Cool. Yesterday and today are the same. Fun and games with the recipe sorting algorithm. I'm in heuristic heaven. So far, I've been faking the data feeds, but today I can plug into the new database. Do you have some time this morning to answer some questions about that for me?
Sure. 11:30, all right?
Great. In impediment land, I'm getting a lot of requests from Susan's team to sneak some new features into this iteration.
I'll talk to Susan and ask her to remind her team of the process. The feature request should go into the backlog. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's me.
Okay. Me next. Yesterday
I'm
I
not
met
a
with
big fan of meetings. I mean, I've got work to do. Just give me the requirements, sit me down in a corner, and let me go. That's the way I've always done things. But these stand-ups, they're fast and they're useful. They give us a good sense of what's happening with the rest of the team and where we need to change course and how we can help each other. They keep us nimble. Yeah, nimble.
Thank you, Marcelino. I go on the next slide, correct?
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, interrupt me whenever you want. I don't have any issues with that. Um, so we're gonna talk about Scrum, and Scrum is basically, or essentially, an agile-based methodology, and it is within it that teams address problems in the most productive and creative way they can to deliver products at the highest possible value in the shortest possible time. And it is composed of the following values. Um, let's start off with courage. It's important to you have courage in order to speak up whenever issues show up with respect to the project and the team in general. uh, One has to be focused, and not only one but the team entirely. Everyone needs to know the goals in each sprint and what they are, and they do so that they can do the best that they can to complete their tasks. Commitment. Teams need to commit to the project, commit to the team, and commit to the company. Understand what is at stake and understand what they can do about it. Respect. Every, I think everyone should be able to take criticism from others and learn from mistakes, because that is a huge part of the Agile and Scrum methodology. And lastly, openness. So you have to be able to communicate effectively about issues or suggestions with one another. Okay, next slide. So we're gonna talk about the rules of Scrum. So before I start with the rules, there's a picture in the right. I want to talk a little bit about that. So in Scrum, you have your product owner. So something that Roberto already mentioned before. You have your team, you have your Scrum Master, and you have here in the right side, in the sprint review, you have your shareholders. Okay. So how everything starts is you have your product owner that um, is in charge of maintaining the product backlog. Okay, all the documentation of the product. And prior to a sprint starting, and a sprint is the amount of time that you are focusing on one task or multiple tasks in the project. um, you come together as a team in the beginning of the spring to kind of prepare what it's going to be like. And then when you prepare it, you're going to put it into the sprint backlog. And I will show you an example of that, how it looks uh, in the next two slides. Okay. After you do the sprint backlog, you're going to be working on your task for 1 to 4 weeks, and you'll be communicating daily in the daily scrum with your team members and your scrum master. And basically at the end, you're just going to have a meeting with your stakeholders to review what was done and how can things improve, or what things have to improve. And then the sprint retrospective to talk with the team about what went well, what didn't, and what did everyone individually learn. Okay. So the first rule is every sprint is 4 weeks or less. This is a common practice in companies because um, having it to be 4 weeks is a very good number to make calculations of how effective an individual is being inside a team and how the team is being effective. Okay. the second rule is there are no breaks during or in between sprints. And this is very, very important. When someone in the team leaves in the middle of a sprint at the beginning or towards the end, it makes a hold in the team, and somebody has to, put more work in, to cover those tasks that the person left. And so things like that are very damaging to the team. But it's important that if anyone, is gonna take a break, it's gonna go on vacation or anything, or something happened, right? They communicate it early and effectively. Okay. Rule number 3 is each sprint must be of the same length. It has to be consistent throughout the year. Number 4, sprint plan must be included in every sprint. We already talked about that, and begins in the beginning of the sprint. Then each sprint must be treated with the intention to ship software. So this one is very, very important in Scrum, and it's very different than in Agile, because in Agile it's basically, okay, we're gonna test a software, we're gonna build it, design it, test it, and if it works, great, we'll keep improving it. If it doesn't, we have to go back in and see what happened and try to improve it. So in Scrum, you don't have that flexibility. In Scrum, you every sprint, at the beginning and at the end, you have to have deployable software. Your software has to run. Your software has to be able to be shippable. Okay. So it has to work all the time. Next slide. Okay. Sprint plan meeting should be at least 1 to 2 hours long. That's common practice. If it's more than 2 hours, that's too much. Okay. If it's less than 1 hour, something's wrong. Okay. When you do sprint plan, um, you have to make the most of it. Okay. Plan ahead, be consistent, know what you can and can't do, and tell it. Okay. Tell it to the team. Um, I remember this past summer in our respective sprint plans, we had this numbers that we would give to specify, okay, this task would I could do it in a day, or in 3 days, or in a week, or 2 weeks. So you know you have to be open and very communicative. Uh, Number 7, daily scrum is held at the same time every day. It should be only 15 minutes long. Okay, that's the same thing that the video showed. Um, Daily scrum depends on how many team members there are in the team. Usually per team in scrum, there's 5. In agile, there's more than 5. But it shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. You just have to answer what you did yesterday, how did you do it, and what are you gonna do today? Okay, those are the 3 questions that you have to answer in daily scrum. Next, every sprint includes a sprint review for stakeholder feedback. And lastly, each sprint includes a sprint retrospective. Okay, and we'll get into that in the next slide. Okay, so this is an example, and this is an Azure DevOps example. So basically, this is where your project, where your sprint resides. Okay, so the image you're looking is one complete sprint. That number ID 66, which is my new bug. If you come with an error, you can write it down, and so that during the spring, so that everyone knows about it. In yellow, you have my new task. That could be, the following task after your user story. And your user story is basically your main task, the one you have to focus on, the one that may or may not take much of your time during the sprint. So that's like the most important one to you as an individual. Okay. My new feature could be something that the team in general is developing. Okay. So it might not be complete, completely up to you. And yeah, my epic title doesn't matter so much. But the important thing about this is that here is where you do your sprint planning, where you do your sprint retrospective. Here's where you plan. Here's where you what where you approve projects, um, determine the time that you're gonna work on them, and have documentation placed on them. Okay, on every particular task. Next slide. Now, we just talked about Scrum, but previously we talked about Agile, and they seem very similar. Well, the truth is, Scrum is derived from Agile, but there are key differences between them. So, in Agile, as I mentioned earlier, it's continuous testing. You know, I'll give you an example. If you're gonna make a rocket, right, you want to test it continuously, right? But you don't want to make a rocket every time you test it, because if you make a rocket, you test it and it doesn't work, it explodes halfway or the beginning stages. That's a lot of money that you're losing. So you don't want that at all. So maybe on a rocket project, it's better to use Scrum, because you're trying to debug at a faster rate, right? But the testing is done continuously every day at the shortest time possible. Like, you don't go and just say, I'm just gonna launch the rocket, test it, see what happens in this test. No, you don't do that in Scrum. You are continuously uh, developing those business values, that main goal, in the shortest time, without having to test, see if it works. If it doesn't, well, we make a new one and test again. You don't want that. So in Agile, you deliver software regularly, right? You don't do it so on a sprint level like Scrum. Software has to be deployable in every sprint. But in Agile, it's basically, you can have it, the software ready for 6 months or 12 months. But Scrum, you don't have that leverage. You just have to always have it running. Agile involves collaboration and face-to-face interactions. Just like you saw in the video, they're in the same room. They're all working together. And even if one is in the other side of the world, they are trying to communicate as effective as possible. And as you saw, that they had a problem, they asked her, hey, can you come over here? We kind of need you. And she's now going to fly over there. In Scrum, you don't necessarily need that. You just need to hold a meeting, but through phone, to video chat, whatever, not explicitly, physically, and just talk for 15 minutes. You don't have to be stuck in the same office, basically. In Agile, design and execution should be kept simple, but in Scrum, um, Scrum permits you to innovate and experiment and test new stuff, do new implementations on a daily or weekly basis. So there's a lot of things to consider when choosing, hey, should I go sometimes with Agile or should I go sometimes with Scrum on different projects? Okay, next slide. And so here I wanted to show you guys, share with everyone some quick reads that were recommended to me in my past internship. And they have to do with both Agile and Scrum. One of them is the Phoenix project, and the other one is the DevOps handbook. And there are other three, but these are the two most known. Um, if you're a technical person, I would recommend the DevOps handbook. It's super technical, and it has that balance between Agile and Scrum, mainly because DevOps, which is another type of methodology, but it's derived strictly from Agile and Scrum. Okay. DevOps takes practices and ideas from both of them and tries to combine them. As we see, they're different, but DevOps tries to merge them together. Okay. And the Phoenix project is more in hands-on with Scrum, but it's a more fun novel. So if you like fun stuff, then I would recommend the Phoenix project. Okay. Next slide. So does anyone have any questions with the presentation, with anything?
Anything whatsoever. Damn.
I'm good.
Yo, jefe, buen trabajo entonces, man.
I'm good as well.
Sounds good.